side of life. The Todd Starnes Commentary.
George Washington would not be welcome in the United States military. Neither would Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin. That's because the Pentagon believes our founding fathers were extremists. Judicial Watch uncovered that revelation after they received copies of a Defense Department training guide. The guide says those who sought to overthrow British rule were extremists. They also accuse people who support individual liberty and states' rights as examples of extremist ideology. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton tells me the Obama administration has a nasty habit of equating basic conservative values with terrorism. You can read the story on my website, toddstarnes.com. The Pentagon did not return my telephone call, but it's safe to say conservative Christian patriots are no longer welcome in the modern-day military. I'm Todd Starnes.
Deeply troubling. Thank you, Todd Starnes, for all you do. We cut out there with Brian Morrow, Clarion Project National Security Analyst, clarionproject.org. But we will be joined, again, we'll be hitting the top story of the day as it is with national security foreign policy, the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian regime, and the comments made today by our Secretary of State, John Kerry. And now we go to something that I've said I don't like to discuss, and that's race, because I think it is a dodge. And not only that, I can back that up with countless examples of how it's being used to distract and also attempt to poison the political environment for minorities in this country and for all Americans, quite frankly. Now let's go to Colin Powell yesterday on Meet the Press. General Powell speaking to the issue of race and Trayvon Martin. Here is what the general had to say. Roll it.
I think that it will be seen as a questionable judgment on the part of the judicial system down there. But I don't know if it'll have staying power. These cases come along and they blaze across the midnight sky, and then after a period of time they're forgotten.
Yeah. Well, in looking at what General Powell has put out there, I think what we will see in the future, if we were to evaluate Colin Powell's record and what he's had to say, it's deeply troubling, because I see more political opportunism and less accountability and different standards applied. That is to George W. Bush versus President Obama. I also see these charges that are being made about the dark vein of intolerance within the Republican Party in that comment. We'll get to that in a second. But this is part of what's wrong with America today. Rather than talking about the great achievement of Martin Luther King Jr. through the commemoration of the 50-year anniversary of I Have a Dream, we are talking to race hustlers and those that would equate showing an ID to discrimination. In fact, Cokie Roberts is going to be making a comment here on the This Week with George Stephanopoulos panel. Now, why does this matter to you? Why do you care? Because it's only going to get louder and more pronounced as we get closer to 2014. And what's important here is that we focus in on the issues. What are the issues? Well, we've got an IRS problem, and we still don't have answers. They're targeting and have targeted, even after they got caught, specific political groups, ones that did not share the Obama administration's worldview. So there's lack of accountability. We've got an NSA that we still are learning about the programs, but a president who seems reluctant at best to clearly outline and explain what the program is and why it's important and why it's in our vital interest to have. We also are dealing with a foreign policy situation that you just heard about. Foreign policy seems pretty distant. But mark my words, we are setting up a lot of dots that are going to lead to a much stronger enemy that can kill a lot of Americans. And first, I think what will happen will be a lot of Israelis. So these things don't happen in a vacuum. There's a process, and we're inviting weakness. There's a consequence for that. And an economy and a health care bill that has, in essence, been a total and complete failure. How can you say that? Well, 56% of the deadlines have not been met, and that's with the 9 taken out from the Republicans not funding them in the House. So that's 56. That's over half. Have you ever gotten a, what do you get, a 44? What does that give you? Okay, you get a 44% in essence. Yeah, that's, what is that called? That's called a help session with Mr. Duncan, and when I got that in algebra, it was a failing grade. We've also had the president excuse certain folks from being under this law, exempting them, delaying for certain groups. There's talk of impeachment. Andrew C. McCarthy explains that there is absolutely a legal case behind it, and it's not really legal because the way the founders dealt with impeachment was a political solution for the president not stepping up to his Article 2, Section 3, living up to those responsibilities. Senator Ted Cruz has made a very good case for that. So what this does is it says, you know what, we're not talking about all of those things, including, and I believe one that will hit home more than anything else because it deals with the deaths of 4 Americans, including our ambassador, and a lie during an election, as well as a promotion of the person that did lie, carried the water, if you will, and that would be Susan Rice, a president that lied, and a news organization that carried the water for that. 60 Minutes in Benghazi. Still no answers. 4 investigations. They're not intersecting. They're not going into one place where you can take the pieces of information and hold them to account under oath. That way you have true accountability. No, we need a select committee. That is why these things matter to you, me, and the rest of America. Because what I just mentioned is having an impact on our economy, our culture, and our security. Do you feel me? So now I go to Cokie Roberts with another hysterical claim about showing an ID. Remember, voter ID laws, have increased. You've seen an increase in the amount of minority participation. They were found to be constitutional by Justice Kennedy, not exactly a conservative. And through all that, Cokie Roberts wouldn't be able to get in the building that she's in to make this comment without a photo ID. But here she is. Roll it.
Having grown up in the Deep South in the era of Jim Crow, the difference is dramatic. And the fact that Andy Young was mayor of Atlanta and John Lewis is a member of Congress from Georgia is a great testament to the fact that when you do something like pass a voting rights bill, that it makes a difference, which is why, at the moment, what's going on about voting rights is downright evil, because it is something that really needs to keep going forward, not backward.
Going forward, not backwards. I'd say accountability and verifying the vote so you don't get what we had in Indiana, or, well, we can take instances, Virginia, Ohio. We can play the game. But what's important here is they're taking something that we all oppose. We all oppose it. And maybe there's one person in the audience that doesn't, and maybe that person wears a beret and sunglasses or wears a sheet on their head. I don't know. But what I'm speaking to, what we oppose is racism and how disgusting it is. And when you invoke that and when you speak to it and you call people evil for putting forth accountability, you hurt the process because you don't have a leg to stand on of substance. And that's the problem with the debate and the discussion. You throw it out, boom, it becomes just that, a discussion. So now I bring you the Reverend Al Sharpton actually saying something that I agree with. A broken clock can be right twice a day. Roll it.
Let me say to our young brothers and sisters, many that were on the program, we owe a debt to those that thought enough for you to put their lives on the line. We owe a debt to those that believed in us when we did not believe in ourselves. And we need to conduct ourselves in a way that respects that. Don't you ever think that men like Medgar Evers died to give you the right to be a hoodlum or to give you the right to be a thug. That is not what they gave their life about. We need to teach our young folk, I don't care how much money they give you, don't disrespect your women. No matter what they promise you, make it clear that you know that Rosa Parks wasn't no hoe and Fannie Lou Hamer wasn't no...
Okay, so there we go. And the rest of the speech, in its greater context, victimization, more statism, and less accountability, and more division. I would give you a transcript and get it out there, but I can't, so I had to listen to it. That's what I do for you. I listen to Al Sharpton. But it's interesting. A wonderful piece by Roger Clegg in the National Review today, who talked about the fact that we're equal under law. And equality under law, does that breed charges of discrimination because of unfair outcomes, in the sense of unfair people not all finishing at the same place? Very interesting piece. On the flip side, Raul Labrador takes on the race hustling industry and makes a very strong case for moving on without bitterness and equality under law. Crane Durham, Something But Truth, AFR Talk.